Hello everyone, this is part 15 of What If Naruto Was Reborn as a Shinigami, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Tenten fidgeted with her new sword nervously. If Naruto's hammer evolved while he slept, then she could probably expect the same thing. Despite the seriousness of the situation, she wondered if she would get a pair of wings that would punctuate the fact that they were meant to be. Ten-chan, pay attention. She snapped back to attention and laid the sword across her knees. It felt strange knowing that the sword that had nearly killed her once upon a time was now hers. Definitely a strange sensation. Itachi looked from one face to the other. He knew Naruto on an unfriendly basis. He tried to capture the boy enough that they were more than mere acquaintances. They were mortal enemies, and a more common enemy had drawn them together. Jiraiya, he was wary of Jiraiya. The Toad Sannin was cagey and wily, a harsh opponent. Orochimaru might have dismissed the man as a fool when he was in the Akatsuki, but Itachi knew better. It was better to have the world think you a fool than to realize your full talents. Itachi knew of the man's skill. He was one of the most powerful ninjas in the world, and yet, the man had a gentle heart. That didn't mean he wouldn't kill a threat. The weapons mistress he knew of in passing. His former partner had battled her once and had said that she was weak. But that was not a fair assessment when you're a thick-headed fool like Kisame was. He couldn't see the forest for the trees, and more often than not underestimated his opponents to the point that one who wasn't even a serious threat could get under his skin and do him bodily harm. He had been all brawn, no brains. That's why he was paired with Itachi. But Tenten was known throughout the countries as having legendary marksmanship. The only thing that could thwart her was wind jutsu that blew her weapons off trajectory. Other than that, the girl was a force to be reckoned with as long as she was standing and had something sharp and pointy in her hands. And now she had Kisame's sword. The fourth member was a mystery to him. The brown-haired man didn't stand out in any spectacular way, and that's what made him stand out. He was nondescript, ordinary, and that worried Itachi. The man was an unknown variable. Itachi hated unknown variables. They always made his life harder. I know of 3 of you, but the 4th is not known to me. Tell me what your name and purpose is here. Sanosuke quirked his eyebrow and crossed his arm. And why should I tell you anything? I believe you're the one wanting favors here. Information will be given as equivalent exchange. I don't know who you are, stranger. I'd just like to know whom I'm dealing with. My name is Sanosuke. That's all you need to know. Itachi's lips curved downward slightly into a frown, but otherwise there was no noticeable hint of agitation. He'd simply have to trick information out of the man a little at a time. But for now, he had to outline what he wanted done. We've eliminated 2 members of Akatsuki at the moment, 3 if you include myself. Having Zetsu S is a huge boon. The man was our information gatherer, and without him lurking around, our movements and plans should be unseen. I will tell Pain and Madara that Kisame SD fighting Jiraiya as I handled Naruto-kun, and Zetsu was taken by surprise by this Sanosuke. He's an unknown variable, so it shouldn't sound too far-fetched. Naruto nodded his head, and suddenly a thought came to him. Where are their rings? Itachi's eyes widened slightly. The boy was becoming smarter every time he met him. I have them on my person. Why? The blonde held out his hand, palm up. Give me Zetsu's. Why? Naruto could see he had piqued Itachi's curiosity and sighed. The man wouldn't give up the merchandise without an explanation. Getting Kisame's ring would be one of the first things you did if he SD, correct? Well, let's say you had to beat a hasty retreat and left Zetsu's behind. I'd rather you didn't have that one. Itachi closed his eyes and leaned back, thinking of his next answer. No. Naruto furrowed his brow and growled. Why not? Because these rings are more than mere decoration. They allow us to teleport our shadows to the extraction site and help with the beasts. They also allow Pain to monitor us if need be. Everyone suddenly became very tense. If that was the case, then why the hell haven't you thrown them away? We don't need to be monitored if we're going to do this. Calm yourself. I am the apprentice of Uchiha Madara. I don't need to be monitored. Besides, to monitor us would take an extreme amount of chakra on Pain's part, and he simply doesn't have the time or need to waste his chakra seeing what his agents are up to. I'll keep the rings though, to prove that the other two are S. The only way these rings come off is if the person is S. Naruto nodded and shifted his weight. His butt was beginning to fall asleep. Tell us your plan for getting rid of Akatsuki. You'll K them one at a time. That's the plan. You're not going to help. Itachi let out what could have been considered an exasperated sigh, except no one was sure with the stoic Uchiha. I can't help with all of them. It would be very suspicious if every time I went out to face you I came back alone and with a partner. You'll have to defeat some of them on your own. Naruto didn't like that one bit, but sat back and crossed his arms. He was through asking questions. Tenten, however, wasn't. Itachi, what are your plans for Sasuke? My brother, I will deal with him on my own. I will only ask for your assistance in dealing with his new team. That is all. He looked around the group and found that they had ceased asking him questions. Now it was his turn. Tell me, Naruto-kun, about your changes. Naruto cut his eyes to Itachi and grinned maliciously. You don't tell me what you want with Sasuke's eyes, so why should I tell you about any of my changes? Itachi's eyes narrowed and he stood. Well, if you won't answer my questions, then I'll be leaving to report to Madara. I hope our plan has success. Naruto nodded and stood as well. Itachi watched as the blonde stretched his hand out. In a show of goodwill, Itachi, I offer my hand to you. As long as you don't betray me, I won't betray you. Itachi's hand slowly reached out for Naruto's, and the group watched with bated breath as the Uchiha's feminine hand wrapped around Naruto's large one. Naruto squeezed hard on the Uchiha's hand and pulled him in until they were nose to nose and snarled at the man. If any of my people get hurt because of one of your fups, I'll K you. That mad smile slowly creeped onto Itachi's face and he, too, tightened the GS. And if you in any way, form, or fashion mess this up, I shall take you into Tsukiyomi and make you watch the Kyuubi's attack over and over. The two stared each other down for several more moments as the tension rose until Naruto spoke. Clear. Crystal. Likewise. They let each other go and stepped away, both resuming their normal facial features. Well then, I must be going. Good luck to you all, and it goes without saying that when next we meet, attack as if you mean to K, otherwise our charade will be worthless. The group nodded and watched as Itachi shunshined away. Naruto turned to his comrades and let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Well, let's plan for the future. Might as well get a system hammered out. The others couldn't agree more. Sanosuke stood before the other three. This was his show for the moment and he wanted a tight ship. All right, here's what's going to happen. Naruto is going to further his training in being Kami's warrior under me. Jiraiya will help and Tenten will be undergoing her own training as well. In between, I'm sure we'll have some missions from Tsunade and the Akatsuki will attack as well. We'll have to be on guard the whole time. Tell me Sanosuke, since you wouldn't tell me before, where did I mess up in Naruto's training? It wasn't that you messed up Jiraiya, it's that you went about things in the wrong way. Naruto shouldn't have relied on the Kyuubi's power to do things. I know you wanted him to utilize it as his, but the fact remains that it isn't his. It's a foreign substance that does his body more harm than good. But the seal is not all powerful. The man that made the seal was fallible and as such, the seal is fallible. Naruto has finally succeeded in locking away the Kyuubi for good it seems though. Jiraiya sat stunned. How could that be? What do you mean he locked it away? Ah, he didn't tell you about the dreams did he? Well, yeah, but that's all there is, dreams, right? Sanosuke shook his head and put his hands behind his back. They were dreams and yet, they were so much more. Every time Naruto had a dream that altered his reality, it was a life-changing experience that stood outside of time. Every time his hammer changed, when he received his chain, when he met Kami. These all happened outside of time and within his own realm of the mind. Jiraiya shook his head. I don't understand. I mean, if it happened in his mind, how could it be real out here? It takes faith, Jiraiya. You have to have faith that things will work out. You tried your best, I know you did, but in the end, the way you did things was wrong. We need to fix these mistakes and put Naruto back on the right track. Jiraiya looked downcast and it pained Naruto to see his mentor in such misery. Tell me, Angel, have I done good in life? Have I been a good man? Sanosuke smiled and walked to stand beside the older man, patting him on the shoulder. You've done admirably, Jiraiya. You may be a lecher, but you have a good heart. It's in the right place, even if your head usually isn't. Now I suggest all of you get to sleep, we start early tomorrow. Tenten looked up from where she was preparing her and Naruto's tent. What about you, Sanosuke? Where are you going to sleep? I don't need to, my dear. I'll just be going to see Kami-sama now. I'll be here to wake you all up in the morning. Sweet dreams. He disappeared again into the night and the teens heard Jiraiya grumble as he rolled into his sleeping bag about smart ass, know it all angels. Tenten giggled and snuggled up next to Naruto, who wrapped an arm around her waist. Night Ten-chan. Sweet dreams. Tenten held her sword tightly as she drifted off to sleep. I wonder whether my dreams will be sweet or not. To Tenten it felt like she had just closed her eyes, and when she had opened them, she was in a barren land full of dense fog. She walked for what seemed like ever until she saw a tall mountain, the only landmark she could find. Surely, she would be able to see her destination from the peak. Only Tenten had no destination. She just felt compelled to look for one from the top of the mountain. She ran for the base of the mountain and once she reached it, she began to climb. Higher and higher towards the peak. It took forever and a day and yet, it seemed like it took no time at all till she was at the top of the mountain. She stood on the peak and looked out over the top of the fog to find it wasn't really fog at all. It was a cloud bank that looked so dense she could step on it. Being the highly intelligent person she was, Tenten leapt for one of the clouds and found it to be quite solid. She likened it to how Naruto's wings felt and rubbed her cheek against it. It felt heavenly. Enjoying my clouds, are you? Tenten spun around to face the voice and came face to face with a pale-skinned beauty. She recognized the woman from Naruto's descriptions and fell to her knees. Kami-sama. The pale woman let out a laugh that sounded like 1,000 merrily tinkling bells and Tenten's heart was set at ease. It was hard not to feel calm around the deity. At least you're better off than Naruto was when he came here. He was fully prepared to rest that day. He thought I was going to punish him for the fox's deeds. The poor silly child. Tenten's head snapped up and her mouth gaped open. He thought that. But, why? Because of the way he was treated. Your soulmate is quite an awe-inspiring man, Ten-chan. That's the reason I chose him to be my warrior. Why did you choose me as his soulmate? I didn't. Destiny brought you two together. You were meant to be. You're two angels on earth. That's what you are. Tenten stood and faced the goddess, not sure exactly why she was here. Kami could sense her confusion and sighed. Kids just didn't know how to be patient. You're here because of your sword. She wants to awaken. Yes, she. Your sword has been abused in the past, Tenten. You are the first virtuous person to hold her since the first warrior that created her. What is her name? Kami shook her finger at the bun-haired girl and clicked her tongue. Now that would be telling. Where's the fun in that? You need to find out the hard way. Kids today, I swear. Tenten watched as the impish goddess began to fade away, giving her the peace sign as she left. Such a strange deity. You shouldn't think such things about Kami-sama. She just likes to tease. Tenten froze when she heard the melodic voice behind her. Perhaps, this was her sword. She turned slowly to find, nothing. Too slow. You need to forget fear if you ever want to see me. Were you afraid that I might be ugly? Tenten turned sharply to where the voice was, but still found nothing. TSK. Now you turn in anger that I evade you. You'll have to do better. Tenten puffed her cheeks in annoyance and spun to face the left of where the voice had come from, in hopes of catching it off guard. Such insolence. You think I would dodge where you think I would. Foolish, and you remain silent. You don't respond to my taunts. You're no fun. Tenten grit her teeth and screeched in fury. Stop moving, damn it. So you do know how to respond. Interesting. You know, you kind of have a manly voice. Your boyfriend must be attracted to guys subconsciously. Tenten whipped around to the voice and barely caught the sight of what she supposed was a sleeve as it vanished. But she saw something. You're not too quick on the get-go, are you? And to think, your boyfriend has such a big hammer and sharp wit. Maybe I should meet him. You stay away from him. He's mine. Arguing with an object you know can't have intimate relations with a mortal. You sure a loopy lady. Stand still so I can hit you. Now why would I do that? I thought you wanted to know my name. Only so I can know the name of the one I'm about to K. Tenten stopped and closed her eyes, trying to calm herself. She was letting herself be baited and she couldn't let that happen. She had to be calm. Focus, focus. Your boyfriend is a real looker, isn't he? You think he still fantasizes about the pink-haired harpy? Tenten growled and swiped out at the voice. She hit F that time and felt the body of the voice back away. Oh, you got me that time. But you still haven't caught me so I can reveal my name. I'll get you on the next go around. I swear. The voice said nothing else and Tenten shut out everything as she listened for footsteps, the sound of breathing, anything. But she felt nothing, heard nothing, and since her eyes were closed, she saw nothing. But a tiny little tickle in the back of her mind told her to reach out with her right hand and grab, now. Tenten's hand lashed out and she grabbed hold of fabric and held strong. Oops. Looks like you caught me. The bun-haired girl opened her eyes to find that the recent bane of her existence was extremely short and wearing a pure white cloak that covered its entire body. And you are. I'm your sword dummy. I know that, you little short freak. What's your name? The cloak being jerked out of her hand and turned its back, crossing its arms in a childlike manner and huffed. I'm not telling you anything. You're being a meanie. I don't want to be your sword anymore. Tenten snarled and grabbed the hood of the sword, pulling backwards. Now listen here, you cheap hunk of little girl. The being turned and set its smiling, innocent face on Tenten. It was hard to believe that such an innocent-looking being could deal death as it had in the past. Hi Tenten. It's me. The brown-haired girl looked down in wonder. Her sword had the appearance of a little girl with red hair, cherubic cheeks, and a pure white dress. She was barefoot and had two tiny little wings on her back. Tenten had to control herself from tackling the small bundle of cuteness. It was, after all, a very ancient, very powerful sword of destruction. Perhaps that was the irony of her appearance. Innocence at its purest in the form of a death-dealing slab of metal. What's your name? The little girl smiled and held out a hand. Kepaku. Nice to meet you, Ten-chan. Tenten grasped the diminutive being's hand and noticed that it felt like Naruto's wings, soft and hard at the same time. You'll find that you have more in common with Naruto than you think. What do you mean? You'll see when you wake up. So, your name is Innocence. As in, not guilty. The little girl nodded her head enthusiastically. Yep, I'm not guilty at all of anything. Aren't you a very powerful sword that has killed many people and eats chakra? Well, I do eat chakra. It tastes different depending on the person it comes from. Like your boyfriend's chakra, it tastes like sweet corn. Tenten snickered and bent down so that she could be face to face with her sword. You're pretty funny. I always thought Naruto's chakra would taste like ramen since he eats so much of it. Nope, sweet corn. Yours tastes like cotton candy. Tenten nodded and sat down on the fluffy clouds, the sword piling up into her lap. So, how is this going to work? Are you going to demand anything of me? Only that you don't abuse me, and you let me eat some of your boyfriend's chakra again. I love sweet corn. Tenten laughed and Kepaku laughed with her. They chatted about little nothings for quite a while until the sword leapt out of her arms and put her tiny hands on her hips. Tenten watched as the sword pulled a small feather out of its wings and slipped it into Tenten's hand. She gripped it tightly and looked for an explanation. Time to wake up so you and I can meet in the real world. Are you as big there as you are here? Nah, I'm a lot bigger. My size doesn't change, just the way I look and am used. Trust me, you'll be surprised by how I look for you. How did you look for your first master? Kepaku put her finger to her chin like a child and, med. I was plain, but beautiful. I had many rune carvings and jewels set into my hilt. But other than that, I was still a large sword and was used to fight off heretics in the name of his god. What was the name of his god? I don't remember. That was a long time ago. I see. How did you become sentient? I don't remember that either. I've been aware as long as I can remember. I've just always been. What's the feather for? That's a secret. Tenten nodded and saw that her hands were beginning to fade, followed by her arms. Will I see you again? Whenever you want. Hey, bring your boyfriend next time. I want to meet him. How? Just touch his hammer and me together, duh. Oh, and be asleep. That helps. Gee, thanks. Never would have thought of that. The impish sword smiled and waved before Tenten disappeared completely. I know. I'm so smart. See you on the flip side. Naruto was outside the tent preparing breakfast for Jiraiya and Tenten. He didn't know when Sanosuke would show up, so he had decided to wait before daylight. He didn't want that sadistic angel sneaking up on him. Ever. No telling what he might do. He turned toward his tent, and as he did, he was blinded by a bright flash of white light and sent stumbling backwards by a giant wave of power. He immediately unsealed his hammer from his arm and began to walk slowly toward the tent. He could hear Jiraiya working furiously to get out of his bedroll and on his feet. Naruto reached out slowly and grabbed the tent flap. Ten-chan. He was met by Tenten's forehead and fell backward, clutching his nose. Damn it, Tenten. That hurt. What's the rush? Misword transformiden metwini wasaliping and metkami and oshe beautiful, but misword is different now and. Tenten. Take a breath and slow down. He held her shoulders and waited for her to catch her breath. Tenten breathed deep and suddenly lurched forward, latching onto his lips, bowling him and her over. This is the sight that Jiraiya walked out to. He grinned lecherously and whipped out his ever-present notepad. All right, Naruto. Now do something with Zaz. You'll put that pencil down if you know what's good for you. Jiraiya frowned and threw the pad onto his bed, before sitting beside the fire and saving breakfast from burning. Fine. If you two lovebirds don't want to be inspiration, you shouldn't make out right in front of me. Now, what's all the ruckus? Tenten leapt to her feet and looked around frantically before rushing back into the tent. My sword transformed last night. Really? What's her name? Naruto and Jiraiya turned to see Sanosuke standing with a piece of bacon in his hands. This is good. Now then, let's see it. The girl smiled, sitting half in and half out of her tent. All right, boys. I present to you, the new and improved sword formerly known as Samehada. Keppaku. She whipped the sword out and Naruto's jaw fell in disbelief. Jiraiya quirked an eyebrow and Sanosuke grinned. The girl was something else. Naruto couldn't help himself. Innocence. Your sword's name is Innocence. Tenten scowled and whacked him upside the head with her palm. Yes, her name is Keppaku. And I happen to think that she's beautiful. Oh, she says you taste like sweet corn. Jiraiya spit out the water he had been drinking and began to cough, prompting Sanosuke to beat his back, trying to clear his airways. He finally caught his breath and began to laugh loudly. Sweet corn. Oh Kami, that's hilarious. Tenten smiled sweetly at the perverted ninja. She says you taste like dog s. How she knows what that tastes like I have no clue. The white-haired man sulked indignantly and turned back to breakfast. Sword looks stupid anyway. Naruto glared at his mentor's back and turned back to his soulmate. Let's have a better look at it, Ten-chan. She handed him the sword and he swung it around, this way and that. He had to admit, it was pretty cool. The sword's hilt looked smooth, but upon further inspection, was actually ridged so that she could get a good GS. What was surprising was the body of the sword. Whereas Samehada had looked formidable and dangerous with its thousands of tiny spikes and sping ability, Keppaku looked soft and decidedly harmless. That was not the case though, not at all. Her entire sword was in the shape of a feather, curved at the end like it was blowing in the breeze, and light and downy looking. A closer look revealed that the individual slivers were razor sharp and the sword most certainly did not sway in the breeze like a feather. It was decidedly not light as a feather either, except to Tenten. Pure white in color, and the advantage of looking like you couldn't beat a helpless man already on death's doorstep to death with it made Keppaku a sword to be reckoned with. Naruto was proud of his soulmate and congratulated her on her sword. He chuckled at how their enemies would probably put her off as a crazy girl swinging a giant feather, right before she SD'd them in half. Tenten looked around excitedly, searching for anything to cut and test out her newfound toy. She bounded over to a tree and drew the sword back like a baseball bat. Naruto's eyes widened when he saw the way the tree leaned at the top. Ten-chan, wait. It was too late though. She had swung as hard as she could and Keppaku went through the trunk like a hot knife through butter. Tenten swung the giant sword to her shoulder and squealed like a little girl, until she saw the way the tree was toppling. She tried to do something, but it was too late. She could only watch as the tree headed straight for her and Naruto's tent. Luckily, Naruto's hammer was already out. He seed back and swung it at the tree, knocking it to the side and sat it down with a sigh of relief, only to hear a shout of anger. You little SS. You crushed my tent. My precious research. Ugh. Come on Ero Sennin, I'll buy you a new tent. I've had that tent for years you little bastard. Sanosuke sighed and stepped in between the two before they began to swing. You two calm down. Jiraiya, Naruto will purchase you a new travel set of your choice. Jiraiya finally caught up to the conversation and grinned evilly. My choice, huh? I accept. Good. Naruto, that was quick thinking, but next time, be more observant of your surroundings. What if that had been an ally or Jiraiya had been asleep? The boy rubbed the back of his head sheepishly and looked at the ground. Sanosuke turned and sets his sights on Tenten. And you, young lady. You need to pay more attention to what you're doing. You could have cared one of us. You should be ashamed. She looked at the ground and shuffled her feet back and forth. I'm sorry. You three hold your heads up. I'm not going to beat you, I'm just scolding you. Now let's eat and then we'll start the good stuff. Naruto doled out the bacon and bread, and began to stuff his mouth. What good stuff? Sanosuke grinned sinisterly and clasped his hands together. Why your tea, of course. What else? Tenten looked up hopefully, thinking he was just playing. You mean training, right? Oh number. I mean tea. The two soulmates looked at each other and gulped. Oh, and it's a spar between you two, no holds barred. See, I'm a genius. That, they decided, was a matter of opinion. At least breakfast was good. X. Why is Kisame not with you? Itachi bowed his head and chose his words carefully. We approached the Kyuubi vessel to try once more to ascertain his power at my behest. I was disappointed with his prior performance. We did not know that Jiraiya was traveling with them, as our information said he was not in Konoha. He fought Kisame while I was tied up with Naruto and the brown-haired girl, Tenten. Kisame was too arrogant as normal, and it cost him his life. And Zetsu, why has he not returned? Itachi turned to where he heard Pain's voice and looked into the ringed eyes. Zetsu was caught by Naruto and killed by that massive hammer. Impossible. Zetsu was not a fighter, but he was too careful to be caught by that brat. Zetsu had become complacent over time and thought himself well hidden. The Kyuubi vessel found him, bound him, and crushed his head. I managed to go back and get his ring before I made my retreat. Itachi suddenly found himself against the wall on the other side of the room, a hand around his tea. Pain stared impassively, but his eyes betrayed his rage. Again, I say, impossible. Zetus was the best shinobi at infiltration. That little brat couldn't have killed him. Tell us the truth. Pain, let him go. If Itachi says that is how it happened, then that is how it happened. He would not betray me. This is foolish. Pain, do not disobey me. I can always find another to follow my orders. You are expendable. Pain stared at his master for several moments before dropping Itachi to the floor and walking out, his robes fluttering. Itachi rubbed his sore tea and looked up into the single eye of Madara. Thank you Madara-sama. Pain-sama needs to learn to hold his tongue. Itachi was met with a backhand that sent him flying. He flipped in the air and stood unflinching. He had to keep up appearances. That was for allowing Kisame and Zetsu to be killed. They were valuable Itachi. It will be difficult to find others of their caliber. Do not fail me again. Itachi nodded and bowed low to Madara. Fear not, Madara-sama. Next time, I shall not fail you. See that you do not. Itachi watched as the man disappeared into the shadows and rubbed his cheek, feeling the phantom pain. Soon, you simpering old fool. Soon, I will be rid of you and your restrictive guidelines and I shall know my limits in a battle to end all battles. And the bane of your existence will help me to do it. That maniacal grin spread slowly across his face and stayed there the rest of the night. X. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.